The glass doors hissed open with a sterile whisper as Mireille stepped inside the atrium of the Solace Center for Neurological Therapy. The scent of lavender-infused disinfectant lingered in the air, clashing with her nerves. Sunlight streamed through skylights above, bouncing off pale marble floors that looked untouched by human souls. Everything was too polished, too quiet. It felt more like a museum than a place for healing. She gripped the appointment card in her hand like it was armor, already regretting her decision to come. Mireille Masick? She flinched at her name. A nurse with a soft voice and gentle expression stood nearby, holding a tablet. Mireille nodded stiffly and followed her through the immaculate hallway, careful not to let her coat brush against anything. The nurse tried to make casual conversation, but Mireille answered with clipped nods. Her attention was laser-focused, on the floor tiles, on the hum of the air vents, on her own breathing. Anything but the fear rising in her throat. In the consultation room, the nurse offered a chair and asked to check her vitals. "Just your temperature," she said cheerfully. Before Mireille could stop her, the nurse lightly touched her wrist to adjust the thermometer. That was all it took. A lightning bolt of pain exploded under Mireille's skin. Her body recoiled with a violent jolt, and she slapped the nurse's hand away with a force that shocked even herself. "Don't touch me," she gasped, voice more desperate than angry. The nurse froze mid-motion, eyes wide. I'm sorry. I didn't mean." The door opened, interrupting her. A man in a charcoal gray suit and white coat entered, calm and composed. He had sharp cheekbones, dark brown skin, and thick locks pulled into a neat bun at the nape of his neck. His ID badge read Dr. Callum Reese. "Everything all right?" His voice was even, but firm. "She reacted when I touched her," the nurse explained quickly. "I didn't realize she was." "She has TNS, Callum said simply, walking past the nurse and toward the tablet station. Mireille narrowed her eyes. "How do you know that without reading my file?" He didn't look up. "Tactile neuropathic syndrome. Your stance, the way you held your jacket, the recoil, it wasn't fear. It was nerve-based pain." The nurse blinked, unsure, then excused herself quietly. Mireille's breath was still shallow. Her arms were clutched tightly around her chest. Callum approached the opposite chair, not too close, and sat. "You're on duloxetine and topical analgesics," he said, scanning the records. "You've seen 4 neurologists, 2 pain specialists, and a behavioral therapist. Nothing has worked." "Thank you for the summary," Mireille said, voice clipped. "Now I remember why I hate doctors." He nodded, unfazed. "I'm not here to impress you," he replied, "just to offer something different." "And what's that? Magic gloves? Ancient tea?" He reached into a nearby drawer and placed a pair of pale gray gloves on the table, hypoallergenic, double-layered microfiber. "These won't fix anything, but they'll make the next few minutes less unpleasant." Mireille didn't reach for them at first. "You're different," she said cautiously. "Because I knew your condition?" "No," she replied. "Because you're not looking at me like I'm crazy." A small smile flickered across his lips. "I've seen what pain looks like. Not just on charts or scans, but in people." He paused, then continued, voice softer. "My mother had this condition. Misdiagnosed for 5 years. Doctors told her it was anxiety. She was given sedatives. When it got worse, they told her to think positive." Mireille's hands lowered slightly. "She lost mobility in both arms," he said. By the time they believed her, she had permanent nerve damage. She was 39. Mireille swallowed. "I'm sorry," she murmured. Callum shook his head. "Don't be." She raised a boy who watched her fight every single day. She taught him what real strength looks like. And now that boy tries to make sure no one else goes through what she did. Mireille finally reached for the gloves. They were softer than she expected, cool, comforting. A fragile shield. "I still don't trust you," she said. "You don't have to." He slid a folder across the table. "This is a protocol we've developed, nerve stimulation mapping with visual feedback therapy. 8 weeks. No opiates. No fake promises. What if it doesn't work?" Callum looked directly at her. "Then we try something else. And if that doesn't work, we try again. We keep going until something does." Mireille didn't respond. She just stared at the gloves, her breath evening out. Later that night, she sat in bed with the gloves still on. The treatment folder lay on her nightstand, unopened. Her room was dark except for the soft glow of the city lights outside. It wasn't hope she felt. Not yet. But it wasn't fear either. Maybe that was enough, for now. The folder sat untouched on Mireille's kitchen counter for 5 days. It became part of the decor, next to the spice rack, beside the chipped bowl of bruised oranges she never ate. Every time she passed it, her chest clenched. Callum's voice echoed in her mind, "If this doesn't work, we try again." The simplicity of it made her suspicious. No one had ever said that to her without the stench of condescension or pity. She still didn't trust him. But she remembered the way he hadn't winced when she flinched. The way he'd said "we," like he meant it. Still, she left the folder closed. It rained on the 6th day. Not a gentle mist but a full, vengeful downpour, the kind that soaked you through before you could open an umbrella. Mireille had planned to stay inside, but she had run out of essentials: rice, tea, oat milk, and if she waited another day, she'd make excuses again. She dressed in layers, thick hoodie, scarf, gloves Callum had given her. The material still felt foreign on her skin, but it was better than nothing. It took her 23 minutes to convince herself to leave the apartment. The city was its usual chaos. Horns blared. Umbrellas collided. Strangers brushed past with muttered apologies. Mireille kept her head down, each brush of a coat or bag a new spike of pain. She managed the grocery store without incident, until the train ride home. It was packed, standing room only. She found a corner near the rear doors, gripping a pole with both gloved hands. A man in a leather jacket shoved in just as the doors closed, bumping into her shoulder. 1,000 knives burst under her skin. She gasped, staggered back, vision clouding as the nerve pain bloomed, fast and cruel. Her knees buckled. The train lurched forward. She barely caught the wall to stay upright. "Get off! Get off!" she whispered to herself. She exited at the next stop, stumbling into the freezing rain. Her whole body shook, not from cold, but from panic. Her arms were burning. Her breath hitched. She walked. She didn't think, just walked. Through 3 blocks, past the corner where she usually turned home, past the cafe she hadn't entered in months. Until she saw the glow of the clinic lights. Solace Center. Open. She pushed the doors open, dripping, wild-eyed. The receptionist blinked at her in shock. I need Dr. Reese," she said, voice trembling. "He's in with someone. Tell him it's Mireille. He'll know." 10 minutes later, Callum stood in the hallway. He said nothing at first. Just looked at her, hair plastered to her face, jacket soaked, her arms held rigid like broken wings. Then he stepped aside and opened the door. "Come in." She sat, dripping onto the floor. A towel appeared around her shoulders. Not a word passed for a full minute. "I changed my mind," she said finally. "But I still don't trust you." "You don't have to," Callum replied. I can't take this anymore." Her voice cracked. "I can't live like this. Like I'm made of fire and glass. I can't ride a train. I can't even wear a cotton t-shirt without flinching." Callum sat across from her. No clipboard. No guarded distance. Just steady presence. "My mother was allergic to most fabrics," he said. "She used to wrap herself in old silk scarves, even in summer. Her arms were always red." Mireille didn't respond. "She told me once," he continued, "that the hardest part wasn't the pain. It was pretending it didn't exist so people would stop treating her like a fraud." That landed like a stone in Mireille's chest. "That's it," she whispered. "That's exactly it." She looked up slowly. His face was calm, unreadable, but not cold. She found no pity there, just understanding. "Is that why you built this place?" she asked. "In part. The rest?" He shrugged. "To prove to myself I could turn guilt into something useful." She blinked. "Guilt?" I didn't fight hard enough for her. Not soon enough. There was silence between them, but it wasn't hollow. Finally, Callum rose and went to a cabinet. He pulled out a soft travel case and handed it to her. Inside were updated gloves, thinner, breathable, and lined with cooling gel pads, and a new weekly plan, printed and laminated. "No charge," he said. "This is part of an ongoing study. Is it going to hurt?" "Yes," he said honestly. "But not all the time. And never alone." Mireille stared at the gloves in her lap. "You said something last time," she murmured. "You said you wouldn't stop trying." "I meant it." She held up the gloves, pressed them against her palms. "I'll come next week." Callum nodded. "We'll go slow. Like baby steps?" He smiled, just slightly. "Like standing still without collapsing. That's the first win." Outside, the storm had come to a drizzle. But for Mireille, something even deeper had shifted. She wasn't healed. She wasn't ready. But she was moving again, and that, in itself, was enough. The 3rd week of Mireille's treatment had begun like the others, quiet, methodical, and painfully slow. Each session followed a rhythm, 5 minutes of guided breathing, gentle exercises to recalibrate her nerve responses, and microstim stimulations Callum administered with careful, gloved precision. The clinic became the only place she didn't feel the need to flinch. It didn't mean she was free of pain, but there was safety there. Predictability. And for someone who lived in a world where even a breeze could feel like fire, that was everything. Mireille didn't smile. Not yet. But she stopped apologizing for her flinches. And that, Callum told her, was its own kind of progress. The real world, however, didn't operate with the same care. It was a Friday afternoon, brisk, cloudy, the kind of day that made Mireille feel bold enough to try something she hadn't done in almost a year. She wore short sleeves. Just to the corner store. It was nothing major. A quick run for fruit, oat milk, and the new dark chocolate brand Callum had told her she could try in moderation. She had laughed at him for the moderation part, only half joking, but it had felt good to tease, to banter. A little piece of normalcy. That made it worse when it all fell apart. The alley was narrow. She didn't see him coming. A man in a leather vest reeking of smoke stumbled out of the bar next door and slammed into her shoulder, bare skin to his denim jacket. Pain detonated across her chest and arm like napalm. She dropped her bag, shrieking in a way that stopped passers-by cold. She hit the ground hard, knees scraping on the pavement, arms curled around herself like a child in a thunderstorm. Don't touch me," she sobbed. "What the hell's your problem?" The man barked, spinning around. She was gasping. Her entire side felt scorched. Her voice cracked, "I have a condition, just don't." "Oh, I get it," the man sneered. "Little Miss Fragile, allergic to oxygen, huh? Gimme a break." Someone nearby chuckled. Mireille blinked through tears. A small crowd had started to form, none of them helping. "Just watching. You think you're better than the rest of us?" the man shouted. Then he pulled out his phone. "Smile, drama queen. You're going viral. No, please, stop." But it was too late. He hit record. The video was online within the hour. The title was Cruel, Grocery Store Meltdown, Girl Screams Like She's on Fire Over a Bum. By midnight, it had over 80,000 views. By morning, 500,000. The comments were worse. Snowflake alert. Someone get her a bubble. This generation is allergic to life. Bet she faked it for a lawsuit. Too ugly to be touched anyway. Mireille turned off her phone, unplugged her router, and curled up on the floor. Her shoulder still throbbed. But worse was the heat of humiliation, the terror that came with knowing the whole world now knew her as a punchline. Not as a person. Just content. The next day, she missed her clinic appointment. The day after that, she didn't get out of bed. She ignored Callum's messages. Callum saw the video. "I'm sorry. Call me when you can. Callum, don't let this be the thing that breaks you. I'll handle what I can. You're not alone." But what could he really do? She was broken in front of the world now. Not by pain, but by the way people laughed at it. It was late afternoon when the knock came. Once. Twice. Then silence. On the third knock, Mireille finally stood, dragging her blanket around her shoulders. She cracked the door open. There he stood. Dr. Callum Reese. No clipboard. No coat. Just a brown paper bag in one hand and steady eyes that didn't flinch when they met hers. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice hollow. "I brought tea," he said simply. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the apartment was dim. Curtains drawn. Air heavy with silence. Callum set the bag on the counter. A box of herbal tea, some dried ginger, and a package of oat cookies she had once joked about hoarding during a supply shortage. "You shouldn't be alone right now," he said. "I'm fine." "You're not." She sat on the couch, arms folded tightly. "They think I'm faking. They're wrong. I know that," she whispered. "But they don't care." He didn't argue. He just nodded. "Then we show them. Not with pity. With truth." She scoffed. "What? I go online and cry about how misunderstood I am?" "No," he said. "We explain. With facts. With science. With clarity. Not defensiveness." Mireille stared at him. "I can't survive another storm. You won't be alone this time." He didn't say it like a promise. He said it like a fact. 2 days later, in a quiet rented studio, under soft lighting and against a neutral backdrop, they sat side by side. Mireille wore long sleeves, but no gloves. Callum wore his usual calm. "This is Mireille Masick," he said into the camera. "She has tactile neuropathic syndrome, a condition where even light touch triggers severe pain. It is rare, but real. and often misunderstood. An animation played beside them, showing misfiring nerve signals. A brush of skin triggering electrical chaos in the brain. "It's not mental," he said. "It's not dramatic. It's measurable. And it affects lives." Mireille spoke next. "I didn't want to be known for this," she said quietly. "But after that video, I realized I had no choice but to speak. Because silence lets people keep lying about us." She didn't cry. She didn't tremble. She just spoke. Clear. Firm. Honest. The video was uploaded that night. By the next morning, it had nearly 1 million views. But this time, the comments were different. "I had no idea this condition existed. Thank you. My sister has fibromyalgia." This hit home. To the man who posted the first video, "You should be ashamed. Mireille, you're braver than I've ever been." She read them one by one, curled on her couch, not shaking this time. Then she picked up her phone and messaged Callum. "Mireille, thank you. For believing. For standing beside me." The reply came instantly. "Callum, you stood. I just stayed." She didn't smile out of habit. She smiled because, finally, the world was starting to see her. Spring returned slowly to the city. Gentle winds rolled through the trees, the kind that once made Mireille cringe in anticipation of pain. Now, they just made her reach for a light scarf. It had been nearly 3 months since the video. 3 months since she spoke her truth, not as a victim, not as a headline, but as herself. And the world listened. Her condition didn't vanish, of course. Chronic pain wasn't something you overcome like a cold. But with treatment, care, and stubborn consistency, the episodes became fewer. The intensity dropped. The panic stopped dictating her choices. Progress. Quiet and steady. The real surprise came in the form of an email. Subject: Design Interview Invitation, Vireo Creative. At first, she thought it was spam. But it wasn't. It was the small design firm she had applied to weeks earlier, on a whim, thinking she'd never hear back. She had clicked submit late at night, in a haze of cautious hope, her resume padded with freelance gigs and mock-up portfolios she'd built while stuck inside. She almost didn't go to the interview. Almost. But then Callum, steadfast, ever-patient Callum, had said one simple thing that changed her mind. "Fear isn't a signal to stop. It's just the body asking you to be careful while moving forward." So she showed up. Long sleeves. Gloves tucked into her bag. Her skin still sensitive, but her posture straighter than it had been in years. And they hired her. Full-time. On the spot. Her first day at Vireo felt surreal. The office was small but open, lined with art books and quirky plants. During orientation, she'd explained her condition briefly. "I have a neurological sensitivity to touch. I manage it, but sometimes I move differently or wear protective layers. Just letting you know." No one blinked. No pity. Just a coworker's simple reply, "Thanks for telling us. Let us know how we can help." She cried in the restroom afterward, not because she was sad, but because she hadn't expected that kind of kindness to feel so normal. By the end of her second week, Mireille found herself laughing at lunch with her co-workers. Not nervously. Not apologetically. Actually laughing. About fonts. And cats. And a heated debate about whether Comic Sans had redeeming value. It didn't. That evening, she texted Callum. "Mireille, first full week done. Want to hear about it?" He replied less than a minute later. "Callum, I'm outside." She opened the building's glass door and found him leaning against his car, hands in his pockets, a soft grin playing at his lips. "You always this punctual?" she asked, sliding into the passenger seat. "I had a feeling you'd want to talk," he said. "I don't even know where to start." "Start it weird," he joked. She snorted. "Okay." It was weird. No one stared. No one overreacted. One woman even asked me for design feedback, not out of pity, but actual interest. Callum nodded slowly, turning the wheel as they drove down a street lined with blooming cherry trees. "That's not weird, Mireille. That's what happens when people see you, not your symptoms." She looked out the window. The sunlight hit her face just right. "You think I'm ready?" "For what?" "To stop hiding." He glanced over, eyes warm. "I think you already have." Back at her apartment, he walked her to the door. Before she stepped inside, he handed her something, a worn leather-bound sketchbook. She opened it slowly. On the first page was a pencil drawing, a figure waiting by a bus stop, arms wrapped around herself, face tilted upward into invisible wind. It was her. That day after her second session, before the world knew her name. "You drew this?" He shrugged. Only when the subject feels real. Her eyes softened. "You saw me. Even then." "I always did," he said. And then he left, not lingering, not expecting. Just there. As always. 2 weeks later, the Solace Center held a private benefit gala, the unveiling of a new branch for chronic pain and invisible illness support. The place was full of donors, researchers, patients, and advocates. A year ago, Mary wouldn't have set foot inside a room like that. Now, she stood backstage. She wore a pale blue dress, long-sleeved, soft fabric, no zippers. Everything breathable, nothing abrasive. Her hair was pulled into soft curls. Her silver pendant rested just above her heart. Callum appeared beside her, dressed in a navy suit with no tie. His pocket square matched her dress. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. Almost. When Callum took the stage, the room quieted. "A year ago," he began, "I met a woman who lived in silence, not because she lacked strength, but because pain had taught her that silence was safer than misunderstanding." He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. "She is here tonight. Not as a patient. But as proof. That healing is not just physical. It's relational. It's emotional. It's the space we create when we choose to stay beside someone through the fire." Then, he turned toward the edge of the stage. "Mireille Masick," he said, voice steady. "May I touch you, not as your doctor, but as a man who loves you?" The room collectively held its breath. He knelt. Took out a ring. Simple. Elegant. Timeless. "Will you marry me?" Tears sprang to her eyes, not from pain. Not from shame. From joy. She stepped forward, slowly. Her bare hand met his without gloves, without hesitation. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times yes. The wedding was quiet. Not secretive, just intimate. No cathedral. No ballroom. Just a garden tucked behind the new Solace Center branch, where soft lavender bloomed beside white lilacs and ivy curled up the trellises like gentle arms. The space felt less like a ceremony and more like a shared breath. Mary stood in front of the mirror in a dress made just for her. Soft, organic cotton. No zippers, no harsh seams, no corsets. It hugged nothing, but held everything. She ran her fingers across the sleeves, long, loose, comforting. Not armor anymore. Just fabric. Just choice. Her reflection didn't look fragile. It looked whole. Outside, the guests were gathering. Former patients, co-workers from Vireo, her neighbors who'd once watched her walk home flinching from the wind and now greeted her with warm smiles. And Marcus, her tailor, who'd spent weeks making sure every thread of her dress was something she could wear without pain. She breathed in. 1 year ago, she wouldn't have believed this was possible. And yet, here she was, about to marry the man who had first seen her not as a problem to fix, but a person to stand beside. Callum stood beneath the lilac-covered archway, wearing a deep gray suit. No gloves. No barrier. His hands, bare and steady, held a small bouquet of wildflowers, her favorites. The ceremony was simple. When Mireille stepped into the garden, no music played. Just birdsong. Just spring air. Just the sound of chairs quietly shifting as people turned to watch her walk toward him. She moved slowly but with purpose. Every step was deliberate, and not one flinch marked her journey. She met his eyes. He smiled, like the sun peeking through clouds. They didn't exchange vows about illness or pain. They talked about kindness. About showing up, again and again. About the difference between touching and being truly touched. After the ceremony, someone asked Mireille what love felt like now. She answered without thinking, "It feels like exhaling after holding your breath for years." The honeymoon was a cabin near a river in the Pacific Northwest. No airports. No fanfare. Just trees, quiet, and the smell of pine. There, they moved slowly, reading books, sketching, cooking simple meals. Callum made tea every morning and placed it in the same mug on the same spot on the windowsill, just because she liked the way the light hit it. They talked late into the night. About the early days. About her fear of being seen. About his guilt over his mother's misdiagnosis. They didn't speak in grand metaphors. They spoke in pauses, in shared silence, in the knowledge that love doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it simply stays. Mireille's pain didn't vanish, but it lessened. And more importantly, it no longer ruled her life. She learned to schedule around her needs, not her limitations. On flare-up days, she worked from home. On good days, she walked to the studio with sleeves rolled up, gloves in her bag just in case, but not as armor. Just options. The world no longer terrified her. Not because it changed, but because she had. And because she wasn't alone anymore. A year passed. Then too. One morning, Callum handed her a sealed envelope with an embossed logo, the Meridian Institute of Medical Research. She opened it with shaking hands. Inside, an invitation to speak at their annual summit on patient-centered care. Not just as a former patient, but as a partner. A voice. They wanted her story. Her insight. Her experience. Mireille cried, not because she was afraid. But because she finally understood something. Her voice was no longer just her own. It was a bridge. That night, she wrote the first draft of her keynote. It began simply. There was a time when touch was terror. When love felt unreachable. When I thought I would never stop flinching. But someone stayed. And in the stillness they offered, I began to heal. Not perfectly. Not quickly. But truly. On the morning of the conference, she wore a tailored black blazer, no gloves. As she stepped onto the stage, hundreds of eyes watched her. But for the first time, she didn't feel like a specimen. She felt like a lighthouse. And sitting in the front row, calm and quiet, was Callum, hands folded, eyes never leaving hers. Not because he needed to save her. But because he always stayed. After her speech, someone in the crowd, a young man with trembling hands and a visible brace on his arm, approached her backstage. I think I have what you had, he said. But no one believes me. She didn't hesitate. She placed a hand over his, gently, lightly, skin to skin. And said, I believe you. And you're not alone. That evening, Callum and Mireille walked hand in hand through the city, past murals, fountains, and benches filled with people they didn't know, but who now knew her. I think I'm living the life I once thought was for other people, she said. Callum squeezed her hand. You were never other, he said. You just needed space to arrive. She looked at him, eyes glinting with joy. I'm still afraid sometimes. That's okay. Sometimes I worry it'll come back. If it does, he said softly, we'll walk through it again. And again. They paused at a crosswalk. The light turned green. Together, they stepped into it. No flinching. No fear. Only forward.